Karakorum. Karakorum Khalkha Mongolian, Kharkhorum, Mongolian Script. Karakorum was the capital of the Mongol Empire between 1235 and 1260 and of the Northern Yuan dynasty in the 14th–15th centuries. Its ruins lie in the northwestern corner of the Övörkhangai Province of modern-day Mongolia, near today's town of Qaraqorum and adjacent to the Erdene Zuu Monastery, the probably earliest surviving Buddhist monastery in Mongolia. They are part of the upper part of the World Heritage Site Orkhon Valley. Foundation of empires. The Orkhon Valley was the center of the Kshinyu, Gokturk, and Aika empires. To the Gokturks, the nearby Kongai Mountains had been the location of the Urtuk and the locus of power, and the Aika capital Karabalgasum was located close to where later Kharkhorum would be erected downstream the Orkhon River 27 km northwest from Karakorum. This area is probably also one of the oldest farming areas in Mongolia. In 1218–1219, Genghis Khan rallied his troops for the campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire in a place called Kharkhorum, but the actual foundation of a city is usually said to have occurred only in 1220. Until 1235, Karakorum seems to have been little more than a yurt town. Only then, after the defeat of the Jin Empire, did Genghis' successor Erdene erect city walls and build a fixed palace. Erdene Khan gave the decree to build the two-men-angle palace of Myriad Peace, Wanengong in Chinese, in 1235, the year after he defeated the Jin dynasty. It was finished in 1 year. In the history of Yuan Chinese letter, it is written in the section for Taizun Chinese letter Erdene Khan in the 7th year 1236. In the year of the blue sheep, the Wanengong Chinese letter was established in Helen Chinese letter Karakorum. One of Genghis Khan's 9 ministers, Yeluchuka 1190–1244, said the following poem during the ridge raising ceremony of the two-men-angle installed ridge, well-fit, and stone foundation. The parallel place majestic palace has been raised when the bells and drums of the Lord and officials sound pleasantly. The setting sun calls the horses of water itself from the mountain peaks. The Mongolian version of the poem is as follows: Zogslontavi Nuru Chulin Tulgua, Zerix and Zoxo Serlegasrik Boskovai, Isntashmadin Hon Henjureg Avete Henhangan and Duasahad Etchinarnulin Tulgui Guzdainiai Agtetig Agnum. The name Karakorum or Kharkhorin literally translates to Black 20. But linguists argue that the Korin might have been a diversion of the word Kurum, which means castle in Mongolian. Other translations vary. Prosperity. Under Erdene and his successors, Kharkhorum became a major site for world politics. Menk Khan had the palace enlarged, and the great Stupa temple completed. They had the enslaved Persian goldsmith Guillaume Bacha design the silver tree of Kharkhorum for the city centre. A large tree sculpted of silver and other precious metals rose up from the middle of the courtyard and loomed over the palace, with the branches of the tree extending into the building. Silver fruit hung from the limbs, and it had 4 golden serpents braided around the trunk, while within the top of the tree was placed a trumpet angel, all as automata performing for the emperor's pleasure. When the Khan wanted to summon the drinks for his guests, the mechanical angel raised the trumpet to his lips and sounded the horn, whereupon the mouths of the serpents began to gush out a fountain of alcoholic beverages into the large silver basin arranged at the base of the tree. William of RUBRUCK. William of RUBRUCK, a Flemish Franciscan missionary and papal envoy to the Mongol Empire, reached Karakorum in 1254. He left one of the most detailed, though not always flattering, accounts of the city. He compared it rather unfavourably to the village of Saint Denis near Paris, and was of the opinion that the royal abbey there was 10 times as magnificent as the Khan's palace. On the other hand, he also described the town as a very cosmopolitan and religiously tolerant place, and the silver tree he described as part of Menk Khan's palace as having become the symbol of Karakorum. He described the walled city as having 4 gates facing the 4 directions, 2 quarters of fixed houses, 1 for the Saracens and 1 for the Katai, 12 pagan temples, 2 mosques, as well as a Nestorian church. Later times. When Kublai Khan claimed the throne of the Mongol Empire in 1260, as did his younger brother Arikberk, he relocated his capital to Shandu, and later to Kombelik Dodu, today's Beijing. Kharkhorum was thence reduced to a mere administrative centre of a provincial backwater of the Yuan dynasty of China in 1271. Furthermore, the ensuing Toluyid civil war with Arikberk and a later war with Kaidu deeply affected the town. In 1260, Kublai disrupted the town's grain supply, while in 1277 Kaidu took Karakorum, only to be ousted by Yuan troops and Bayan of the Borin in the following year. In 1298–99 Prince Olis looted its markets and the grain storehouses. However, the first half of the 14th century proved to be a second year of prosperity. In 1299, the town had been expanded eastwards, then in 1311, and again from 1342 to 1346, the stupa temples were renewed. Decline. After the collapse of the Yuan dynasty in 1368, Karakorum became the residence of Bölük Tukon in 1370. In 1388, Ming troops occupied and later razed Karakorum. According to Sagan Sessions Erdene Zuu in 1415, Kurotai decided to rebuild it, but no archaeological evidence for such a venture has been found yet. However, Karakorum was inhabited at the beginning of the 16th century when Batu Mountain Khan made it a capital once again. In the following years, the town changed hands between Warads and Chinggisid several times and was consequently given up permanently. Excavations. The Erdene Zuu Monastery stands near Karakorum. Various construction materials were taken from the ruin to build this monastery. The actual location of Qaraqorum was long unclear. First hints that Karakorum was located at Erdene Zuu were already known in the 18th century, but until the 20th century there was a dispute whether or not the ruins of Karbulgasun or Ojibalik were in fact those of Karakorum. In 1889, the site was conclusively identified as the former Mongol capital by Nikolai Yadrintsev. He discovered examples of the Orkhon script during the same expedition. Yadrintsev's conclusions were confirmed by Wilhelm Radloff. The first excavations took place in 1933-34 under D. Buchanisch. After his Soviet-Mongolian excavations of 1948-49, Sergei Kiselyov concluded that he had found the remains of Erdene Palace. However, this conclusion has been put into doubt by the findings of the 2000-2004 German-Mongolian excavations, which seem to identify them as belonging to the Great Stupa Temple rather than to Erdene Palace. Excavation findings include paved roads, some brick and many adobe buildings, floor heating systems, bed stoves, evidence for the processing of copper, gold, silver, iron including iron wheel naves, glass, jewels, bones, and birch bark, as well as ceramics and coins from China and Central Asia. 4 kilns have also been unearthed. Buildings. The virtual Qaraqorum project of 2020 reconstructed the city in an explorable 360-degree format based on the latest archaeological studies. The following are some of the notable buildings of the city. Khan's Palace. The Tumanambalan Palace of Myriad Peace, built in 1236, was located at the southern end of the city enclosed by a wall of its own. Previously, the large building outside the Erdene Zuu Monastery on its northwest side was thought to be the Khan's Palace. Later research revealed that the large building was actually the 300 feet 9 ton tall pavilion of the rising Yuan. The Khan's Palace is now understood to have been located on the exact site of the Erdene Zuu Monastery. The northern wall of the palace separated it from the city, the outline of which can be clearly seen on satellite images. 13th century walls have been excavated under the current walls of the monastery. William of RUBRUCK wrote that Mangued at Karakorum, a great palace, situated next to the city walls, enclosed within a high wall like those which enclose monks' priories among us. An even older layer dating back to the 8th century has also been discovered under the 13th century walls. This has been theorized to be the Takhai Balgas Takhai city mentioned in Mongolian chronicles relating to the foundation of the Erdene Zuu Monastery. The Yuanshi and the Karakorum Sino-Mongolian inscription of 1342 both state that Genghis Khan established his capital in Karakorum in 1220 and that Ojde Khan later built a wall around the entire city in 1236. Some remnants of the smaller old wall may have already existed during Genghis Khan's time, and his palace would have been stationed in the spot of the Palace of Myriad Peace. In a traditional circular, mobile camp arrangement, the mobile palace of the Khan is usually located in the center with an open square or unhindered space to the south which was well guarded. In the case of Karakorum, the non-palatial part of the settlement grew only to the northern side of the palace with no settlement to the south of the palace. This not only followed the general principle of the Curie but also provided the Khan unhindered access to the nearby river and forested mountains to the south and southwest which were his hunting grounds. This also ensured that there was no settlement upstream the Orkhon River which flowed northwestwards along the western side of the city from the southern mountains. A similar arrangement existed in present-day Ulaanbaatar, where the southern part of the city close to the river and mountain was reserved for the Khan, whereas the Jai districts expanded to the north. William of RUBRUCK states that the Khan's palace in Karakorum was like a church, with a middle nave and 2 sides beyond 2 rows of pillars, and with 3 doors to the south, and beyond the middle door on the inside stands the tree, and the Khan sits in a high place to the north, so that he can be seen by all, and 2 rows of steps go up to him. By one he who carries his cup goes up, and by the other he comes down. The space which is in the middle between the tree and these steps by which they go up to him is empty, for he stands his cup-bearer, and also envoys bearing presents, and he himself sits up there like a divinity. On his right side, that is to the west, are the men, to the left the women. This was in line with the interior arrangement of a Mongolian chair, as William of RUBRUCK states separately in his account. When they affixed their dwelling, the door turned to the south, they set up the couch of the master on the north side. The side for the women is always the east side, that is to say, on the left of the house of the master. He sitting on his couch, his face turned to the south. The side for the men is the west side, that is, on the right. This arrangement, as well as the avoidance of touching the entrance threshold mentioned by RUBRUCK, has continued down to the present day among Mongols. Apart from the permanent palace of Kharkhorum, there was the moving palace of the Khan, which regularly moved around the city and settled in a ring-shaped puria or circular enclosure on its tops. William of RUBRUCK served as a priest of the Khan along with a Hela monk from Jerusalem for 4 months in this moving palace before entering Karakorum in April 1254 with the Khan in his moving palace. Despite the destruction of the permanent palace by the Ming in 1388, there was still a moving palace in the region until 1585, when the senior genocide of the central Mongolian region of Tai-Sein Khan decided to restore the permanent palace area in the form of a monastery, Erdene Zuu, using the stones and bricks of Kharkhorum. Erdene Zuu also became the mother monastery of Övörkhangai. Övörkhangai was founded in 1639 by Tashit Khan Gombodij, the grandson of Tai-Sein Khan, both of whose mausoleums are within Erdene Zuu as a residence for his 5-year-old son Zanabazar. Övörkhangai Palace was also called the Hurai Circular Enclosure and was initially staffed by monks from nearby Erdene Zuu. Chairs from Gombodij's own Hurai as well as the Jur temple of Tai-Sein Khan were given to Övörkhangai. Tai-Sein Khan's Jur was dismantled in Ulaanbaatar in 1937. The circular Jur district surrounding Gandantikchinin Monastery in Ulaanbaatar itself, an extension of the Zun Kuri/Hurai, is the only remaining Hurai organically descended from Gombodij Hurai and arguably the only remaining Hurai in the world. A Hurai called the Ring of the Avars, written H-Ring, a circular fortress of the Övörkhangai containing 3 centuries worth of gold and treasures, was taken by Pepin of Italy in 792. William of RUBRUCK said that within the palace of Qaraqorum there are many buildings as long as barns, in which are stored his provisions and his treasures. Otomalik Juveni, a one-time resident of Qaraqorum, says in his history of the World Conquer that Ojde Khan frequently invited people into the open yard of these treasure buildings where they were free to carry away all they could in a set time. The Khan also gave frequent donations from this treasure to the city's poor. The palace was built in Chinese architectural style, as was common in the region since Xiongnu times. There were 3 main palace buildings standing side by side in a parallel form as mentioned in Nyarlathotep's poem. The 3 main buildings of Erdene Zuu Monastery are also parallel and sit on an elevated platform like the earlier palace. Fragments of the Sino-Mongolian inscription of 1342 were found embedded in different places in the walls of Erdene Zuu Monastery, thereby giving further proof that the monastery was largely built using stones and bricks of Karakorum. A chief feature inside the main palace was the silver tree made by William of Paris.